nice. I wish everybody did that.
Oh,
Yeah, except for me. I have no intention on doing that.
Looks like they haven't joined in yet. You can see in the right corner there, viewers. If somebody's gonna watch it, like Ashley will pick up here, you'll see the viewers. go up
So
to
this is
one.
recording right now, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, this is on right now.
I don't know. Usually company that shows up on the.
Not that I've seen. No, not with the emails I've
So
seen.
do we need just to call them?
I think they're actually still on the line.
Lisa, can you hear us?
Are you
Are you-
saying anything?
Did you click on the hyperlink to join?
You're saying what?
Yep.
I really would like to be able to see Cindy. I thought you were going to be able to do that.
Yeah, they're seeing
Yeah,
that.
they're seeing this here.
Yeah. So do they just need to play?
Now they should see us in the background here. So we see them. So I don't know if that's.
Can you see us now? You're still seeing the screen?
So they should be seeing, but if I bring this up, I think, Lisa, you should be seeing this, right?
Not yet, no, not that one.
Oh,
Because
no.
I think it's still on screen. Yep. Oops. Got too many tabs going here. So yes, screen share.
Yeah.
That's why I like full screen. That way you can see everything that's on mine.
So yeah,
Yeah. You've got two screens.
so yeah, they're probably seeing us, and then this. They're probably seeing us in the corner, and then they're seeing what's actually up on the screen here being projected. So if I bring this up, they're gonna see this right now.
Can you put it in from current slides? Okay, now minimize it. Thank you. Now, how do we get it so that they can see us during a conversation?
Let's see here.
Well, that's good. Now, when we decide to start highlights, it's gonna go so smoothly.
Eugene has a chassis. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's actually seeing that now. Join Hangout. Because if I click this, I think it's gonna actually go in. Yeah, and the tile effect.
The last time she came up by us. One of you guys are on vacation. And you thought we were sick.
It was me on vacation and Connie was sick with whooping cough.
You're talking about presentations or
And she's just like, and here I am in Fond du Lac and Board's at this there all by herself.
Oh, I see.
I'm like, hey, we do
Friction reducing devices. I have a.
Lisa, what do you see on your screen?
Probably now. Per se. Yeah, yeah.
I was all the way from
I think that's the
I would
friction reducing device.
stop the one and just go with the invite one where you can see the workman's comp review.
That out.
Wow. There only be 65 of us, so we can go, but it doesn't have to.
Oh, and I just saw that for the first time at a conference. Yeah, that's like, right. Yeah, it's like, that is clever. It was just like, yeah, urban nurse. And it's, and it's truly no effort at all. I can tell you. I went to the station and your hand just went, just everybody on the planet. And I literally came home with this stuff and I did finally take the time to file it. So I got this little folder, like a binder with.
Lisa, you still on there?
Slip sheets,
It just works.
sit scans, how our different kids. Those types of things.
It's that day and age, they gotta text and call someone.
Well, and then I
Drives me nuts, 'cause
yeah.
This is the company.
Mhm.
They're trying texting on one of these, it doesn't work.
It's
You guys
minus
don't
one.
Well, we're in the basement.
I guess we was asking.
Oh, yeah, the green room,
It
right?
doesn't ring anymore.
That makes it-
Oh,
Do you have one that's a text on?
You don't know.
Oh, yeah, I use my personal one. They just sent out an exception letter. Wow.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Especially if it doesn't ring.
Although they're telling us to move it. And I said, well, we're not moving, but.
You have to wait and see if it's up for a new phone before you drop it. You have to give me the timetable.
So county change.
I can tell you what,
It's all
yeah,
a big game. There's nothing wrong with it.
we have 3 phones in Fond du Lac.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
2 RCs that oversee multiple homes, and so they each have a phone. And because then we're not worrying about them using their own phone, we can programs and case managers having to get ready to hold of them, and so they use 2 of them, and they just, because they really try to stay away from texting. So,
Yeah, this generation. coming up
Yeah,
is-
many now are
Using a phone is separate.
yeah, most of the time when this phone rings, most of the time this phone rings, because I'm not in the office. You know, if it's something important that I need to hold it, only one family member around the house. One family member is it never fails. Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
So I was calling to say, this is what happened this week. You can call me anytime. Or call me on Monday. So I spend my 10 minutes on the phone. Oh, wait. It's like, hey, if that's the time, what's best for you?
We should know what your schedule is.
It never fails. We're always at 10 o'clock on Saturday mornings.
And it's just got basement.
I mean, yeah, so we would have to go upstairs.
They would have outdoor that.
What's that?
But they're not taking anything.
Yeah, my last thing I had applied for, I found myself texting all the time, my emails all the time when I was at home. And no, that's the nice part of this, because unless I go to the actual website, I'm like,
Yes.
it's not just.
It's too hard when you see something.
Well, you know, like, seeing the guy with no kids, no my family lives close, so there's a lot of times that I get bored of it. So,
Yeah, so I wasn't
Tammy actually called me the week after, I think she was actually vacation, she goes, we're down a couple of staff, we got new staff, and I'm coming here, like, Tanner, you want to have a last month, there was like $1,100 for overtime.
Yes, I was.
Remember how nice money was that? Was
Well,
I said, I don't have any staff to send to you.
So I don't know if we can do multi calls.
Okay, everybody, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Lisa and Lily, you're still there?
Yeah, they probably won't. They'll probably respond here.
Lisa and Lily, are you guys there? Yep, okay. Well, it looks like you're not going to be able to see us on camera, but you're at least able to see the PowerPoint, which is the most important, and that's what we're recording for future employees. So as I introduce Cindy and Maureen, you're just going to have to use your imaginations as to what they look like. So I will welcome, come on up forward here, just so I can introduce you, please. I'm sorry. And Cindy, we're going to need you to talk into this. You don't have to be too clever about like picking it up, but it will.
Sure. Can I just grab this?
And your PowerPoint is up because we had to have it on ours. So
it's
you're not
okay.
going to need to use.
Yeah, I kind of figured. I brought
Okay.
mine just in case, but I was
Okay.
kind of assuming it was
Okay.
all set to go.
All right. So
Yeah.
Cindy is, Cindy Ferrari is from Argent, who you guys all know because I've been saying it so much as our new work comp provider. And Cindy is our loss control consultant. She helps us with that. Cindy will also share a little bit more about herself, but we welcome you to this probably hour and a half to 2 hour training. We don't know how long. I know we're going to break off into some groups, and at which time we'll have to see if we can pull Ashlyn back in and let them see us, what we're doing. And Maureen Anderson is from M3. She's the risk manager. And M3, we talk about sometimes there are brokers. They helped us find Argent, and they are going to help us stay with Argent. And Cindy is going to help us stay with Argent. And best of all, both of them are going to help us keep our workplace safe, which is what this is all about. It really is about that. And Cindy's going to give us a quick 101 on work comp, and we're really just looking forward to this. We've been very excited about this training. And because it's being videoed, I would ask, Cindy's going to have her PowerPoint presentation up here. Her voice will come over the top of the video, which is what we will capture. That perhaps we could save questions for when she's done through PowerPoint, but if you really need feedback in, feel free to.
There probably will be a few points when I'm going to pick your brain just a little bit,
Okay.
or if you want to intercede, just because I want to make sure that the concepts apply to the way that you're going to be functioning.
Okay.
So
Okay.
doesn't do you any good to teach something that you can't use.
Yes, that's right. So Cindy, it's all yours, and Maureen will be visiting with us later when we
Great.
talk about other
Thank you.
things. Yeah.
Does it matter if I sit or stand? I'm usually pretty informal, so that's why I said chime in when you need to, and go from there. Just a brief mention about myself. Usually it's probably Cindy with a swear word just before or after it. I hope not. When I've been coming out. My background is actually in occupational health nursing, so I've been doing that for a really long time. Prior to that, I have good old-fashioned med-surg and ICU and employee health and all those types of things too. So I've actually been on your side of the fence before this. The presentation, the core of it is how to do a good accident investigation. But you can't do that well without kind of building the road leading up to why you do what you do and the thought process. So we're going to start out with just some of the basics of 101 worker comp, because it really is the driving force for the rationales for why I'm saying what I'm saying. So hopefully I build my case well as we go on, and I will pick your brain on a couple of things as we go on, just because I really want to make sure that it is truly the way I phrased it is applicable to your location. All right, so how do I, this is not advancing, so is it just this? No. Is it that? No.
Is it on the
Is it on
keyboard?
the keyboard? That
No. No, no. I was set up. Okay, so now this, there we go. All right, great. So again, just some of the basics of Worker Comp 101. What worker comp is and what it's not. It's really important to understand. You'll be thrilled to death to know that Wisconsin is the first state in the nation to actually create worker comp. And so there are pros and cons, I'll be honest, just, from everybody's perspective. But the reason why it was created was because, and we're talking 100+ years ago, employers really were very awful to their employees. And employees would have losses, and then it was, yep, bye, see you later. No compensation, no attempt to make things right, and safety really wasn't much of a concern. So that's what really prompted that. So what worker comp is now is basically designed to compensate somebody for any of their actual hard costs. So anything that is tangible, you know, the cost of a doctor's appointment, the cost of a prescription, the cost of the gas to go to the doctor's appointment and back, any of those concrete things, that person is made whole by covering those things. It will also cover lost time, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth in a little bit, but if you actually lose work time, it will cover that. And rehab, any of these other types of things. Indemnity. Indemnity is another way of saying time paid for not working, and you get paid for that. And of course, if there's a death benefit as well. It does not, by the way, cover pain and suffering, punitive measures. So, you know, I think we've all heard of the story of the 80-year-old lady that spilled McDonald's coffee on herself and sued for like multi-millions. And that was obviously more than the cost of wound care. It was punitive. It was, you know, these pain and suffering. That's one thing that is not covered under worker comp. So that's a protection for the employer, is so that you don't have these crazy, wild, absurd lawsuits. So there's a pro and con to each side. Okay. So what does it not cover? And this is really important because this ties in with the accident investigation. It does not cover things that are not related to work. So if somebody has an appendix attack while they're at work, their gallbladder acts up, that's not work related. It does not arise out of the course of employment. It's not covered. If somebody has an injury outside of work and wants to then claim it as work relatedness, that's obviously not covered. But that is, and I try not to sound too cynical after all these years, but that is one of the reasons why it's so important to do a good investigation, is because you want to make sure that you are documenting everything as soon as possible, because if it's a shady case, you've really got a very small window of time to document that something ain't right. Colloquially speaking, something's not right. And then, of course, benefits may be reduced, terminated, probably not likely, honestly, in the state of Wisconsin. But you can reduce the benefits by a small percentage if somebody is connected with alcohol or drug use. And beyond that, you certainly want to have that detected for other obvious human resource reasons. Okay. So again, you need to make sure that those things are covered right away. So what are these numbers? Anybody guess?
The amount you've paid out.
That is the check that you folks, you kind folks, just wrote to Argent for your insurance for the policy year. So, yep, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And the other number is what we call an experience mod. And it's important for you folks from a business perspective, everybody really, to understand what how that impacts your business. So that experience mod is, think of it as a rating. You know, how you compare to other businesses of your similar nature, your similar head count. You know, where do you rate in that? So, and of course, you all know that numbers mean nothing until you put those into comparison. So another way to think of that is you all have a rating the way that your car insurance company sees you. You know, if you're a really good driver, you've been fantastic for years, you're going to have a better rate than somebody who puts a 17-year-old boy onto their policy, and then 3 months after he's driving, he gets a speeding ticket. Does that sound like I'm speaking from experience? And what do you suppose happens to those rates? Your rating. And do you suppose after he's seen the light that they say, okay, well, you know, he's seen the light, so we'll lower those rates? They remember that. They have long memories, 3 years, right? That we'll be paying those higher rates. Okay, so that's what the rating is. Now let's go into what that number, how that compares. Huh. There we go. All right. The rating, the way that the state, and by the way, the state does the calculations for what that premium is. That $157,000 plus premium, Argent did not calculate that. That is actually calculated by the state. So, and I think that surprises people that the insurance company doesn't do that. We compete in a different way, which goes beyond the scope of this. But the state looks at what you are as a type of business. You know, you're a type of home care, home setting business, and you have a certain type of code for what you are, as opposed to, say, a foundry or 10 guys in a garage computer programming. So you are a code, and they see you as what you are. They look at your head count, your payroll. Again, you are what you are. Nothing much that you're really going to do to affect that. But then they also look at your history. How many incidences you've had. Were they medical only or indemnity? Remember indemnity, I call it the dirty I word, indemnity, because that means that you are paying for somebody to sit home and do nothing for you instead of paying them to come to work and do something for you. Now, does that even make a good business perspective? It just doesn't even make sense when you put it like that. Okay, so, but the state looks at indemnity cases versus medical only, and it takes all of those things into consideration, and it comes up with that rating. Now, your rating is 1.01. Now, to put that into perspective, the state will say, okay, you're this type of a business with this many people, this much payroll, this type of a, so we would expect for your type of business to be, we're going to use a number of 100,000. For a dead-on average 1.0. So 1.0 is kind of your dead-on average. You're exactly what you are, exactly what the state would expect you to be. So everything is predicated off of that 1.0. So think of it as like a C student. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to. You're not stellar, you're not failing, you're just kind of dead even. And everything is predicated off of that 1.0. If you are above that 1.0, that means your history is a little worse. And that means that you'll be paying more in premium. If you're below 1.0, that means your history is better, and then you're paying less in premium. So just using as an example of a $100,000, exactly normal, what we would expect, 1.0. If you were a 1.20, so 20 points above, you'd be paying 20% more in premium. So you'd be paying $120,000. Or let's say the other way, if you were 0.8, so again, you're 20 points below, you'd be paying 20% less. So you'd only be paying $80,000 as opposed to $100,000. So in the end, those little points add up. And that is something that you can affect, because remember, part of that experience mod is your frequency, your severity, whether it's medical only or much worse, indemnity. Okay. And then one thing that I want to show you again before we get into the numbers in just a moment is when the state looks at cases and sees medical only, they only quote unquote see or use 30% of that dollar amount into the calculation for the mod. If you have an indemnity case, even just $1, which doesn't really happen because you really don't have $1, but let's just say it is $1, it's indemnity. Boom, it doesn't matter. You're labeled indemnity, and that entire dollar amount is seen, calculated into that experience mod. So it hits you at 100% versus only 30. And that makes a radical difference in that experience mod. And that is something that you can control. And again, I'm kind of leading the groundwork as to how that's going to work, but that is definitely something you can control. with your good accident investigation and a prompt intervention. Okay. So just make it clear, let's say your $1,000 claim, your $1,000 claim, but your indemnity and your medical only. They're only going to calculate 300 into that experience mod, and it won't have a huge impact. They're going to calculate that full 1,000 into yours, even though both of you cost technically $1,000. So it's a big deal. All right, so I had provided a sheet like this, so everybody should have that.
It's coming. It's on the printer, but I didn't hold it.
Oh, okay. Do the folks in Neverland there have theirs? Yeah, the people watching on TV.
Lisa, did you guys get the trend report? Evidently they can't hear it. Let me go see if it's off on the printer.
Hopefully they can hear. They just can't respond.
So question while we're
Yes.
waiting.
Uh-huh.
So if the cause and effect here, if we get people back to work quickly so that they don't have that lost time, it will impact and then result in medical only.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So
I'll repeat that. I'm not sure what they can hear or not. So I'm not sure if you could hear the question, but the question was if you're able to work with somebody promptly and get them back to work in a timely fashion, does that impact the difference between medical only and an indemnity claim, meaning lost time? And the answer is yes, most definitely. That's one of several benefits to doing it promptly. By the way, lost time, when we're talking about worker comp, is a definition of being gone out of work more than 3 days, So day 4, day 5, etc. OSHA's a little bit different. So we're just talking about worker comp right now. I would also make a point of making sure you know that those first 3 days, if somebody is out for, say, just 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, they don't get paid at all. So those folks are going without pay at all. And I'm not sure if people necessarily understand that. And again, that's a lose for your employees. So there's an ethical reason to keep people working gainfully employed as well. It's not, this is one of those things where you're two sides to the same coin. So, and when they do get, let's say they are on indemnity, they only get 66 2/3% of their normal salary. So they've got a third chopped off right there. And most people don't like that either. I wouldn't like that. So it's not the panacea that you might think it is. Okay.
My apologies.
Oh, that's all right.
They're coming, and I'm going to go send Ashlyn theirs right now.
Oh, good.
They can
Okay.
get it.
All right. Not any worries. I roll with things. Not a big deal. You're just long enough, you realize you don't sweat the little stuff. It gave a good chance to answer questions. So I would like to now put this into perspective for you folks. This is your stats. This is actually, oh, good. These are actually your numbers. So, and I was able to pull the numbers based on the last year plus that you've been with West Bend and Argent. Prior to that, I did look at your history, but I can't pull them because they're not in our system. But I will tell you the trends prior to this are exactly what you would expect to see with a medical organization, patient handling. And I generically use the term patient. I try to use the terminology of consumers or customers or however they use it. But I've been a nurse for too long and it's hard to slip out of those bad habits. So you know what I mean. Patient handling, combativeness, slips, trips, falls. Those are typically biggies, and that would be your trends as well. So let's just take a look. Top left, you can see that for the policy year in 2014, you had 15 reports. And I say reports because not all resulted in a claim, but 15 injury reports or events of some type. You just started technically with Argent. That's why there's another policy that started just a few days ago, beginning of May, because that's now with Argent. So you've had 17 reports since November 2014. I will also run trends to look at things like, gee, it doesn't matter the day of the week. There's a little bit of a spike. You see it's heavier on Monday and Tuesday. Nothing that really jumps out at me though. But you do kind of want to keep track of if there's a trend, and I can see that as well. Again, I know this sounds suspicious, but you will see a lot of Monday injuries because people have hurt themselves over the weekend and they come in and blame it on work. Or you see the people that get injured on a Thursday, which you don't see that here because they want a long weekend. Yeah, I've tried not to sound too cynical. I'll really try, but nothing at this point really jumps out at me. I will point this out to you. Length of service group, that middle section on the right. Length of service, I can run it and see if we're having trends with a certain group. And what jumps out at you? I call them the newbies, folks that have been with an organization less than a year. So if you lump that together, you'll see newbies by far make up the largest portion of that 15 count. So what will that tell you? Training, education, training, doing some observations fairly on in their process. So that's something to note to self when you're moving forward, is pay a special attention to the newbies and make sure that they are clearly understanding. And part of your accident investigation will be, what was it that they didn't understand? So, and we'll talk about this more in detail as well, but root cause, true root cause. As far as the leg times, I'm jumping around just a little bit, but top right, leg time since inception. This is a big deal because this is something you can control. And the simplest way I can put it is the further the horse gets out of the barn, the harder it is to catch. And you all know, even if it's a medical case, the longer somebody kind of founders without appropriate medical attention, usually the more it gets exacerbated. So you always want to make sure that you're on top of these things right away. You'll always have your best results. And when you're able to assist somebody and do the right thing right off the bat the first time, it helps you to return them promptly to work, even if it's with light duty. And what do you avoid? Indemnity. So we're starting to see how it all one ties to the other. So lag times meaning less than 3 days. And of course that golden window, remember, 3 days. So ideally, you'll want to be aware of these when they occur. I believe your policy is now, so correct me if I'm wrong, your policy is that employees are to report an incident when it occurs, or certainly by the end of the shift. And that will almost always, I won't say always, I've had a couple oddball cases where they honestly could not have realized, but almost always they know when something happens, or certainly within, a short time frame thereafter. Okay. So that's yet another issue. And if they don't tell you for a couple of weeks and then go, oh, by the way, last January I did something and now I want to blame it on you, they get written up as part of the disciplinary process. But that's the reason for it, is because you really need to stay on top of something promptly and be able to do the right thing right off the bat. So, but for the most part, you can see that 11 out of your 17 reports did indeed come within that 3-day window. So very good. You'll see it sorts funny sometimes, so that's why it's out of sync. But the 4 to 10 day, there were 5 cases. And obviously that's a bit beyond the window of desire. Still, I never judge. The first thing I'll say is, why was that? There will be what I call some acceptable delays. And I'll give you the example. And this is something that you'll want to apply. It's a Monday, I've slipped and fallen, I've scuffed up my knee, and I come in and I let you know. So I've done what I was supposed to, fill out the report, let you know. You'll say to me, well, I'm glad you think you're okay, because I'm fine. Classic, I think I'm fine. And you say, I'm glad you're okay. If anything changes, if your medical status changes, or at any point you need to seek medical, you have to let me know. Now in Wisconsin, we're not trying to direct care. You're not trying to prevent care, but you have to know. So you'll want to remind your folks, if anything changes, you've got to let me know. It's part of our requirement to help you. So I've told you it's Monday. Friday morning, I wake up and my knee is actually more swollen. I can hardly walk on it. And I call you back up and say, boy, it's just not getting any better. So that's day 5 now. So it's going to show up as a lag. And that's what I would call an acceptable lag. The most important thing is you knew when it happened, knew when my medical status wasn't improving. So you still maintain control. So I don't always get terribly excited for some of these that fall into this 48, because as long as you know, and at that point, then you will say, yes, Cindy, you know, if your knee really is that swollen, we do need to get you somewhere. Can I help you get into your clinic? Or we have a good occupational clinic down the road. Can I assist you? Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. But that's really all it takes, is just for the horse to not run off on its own. Okay? So that's why lag time is important, is for you to maintain the best control over something. All right. And then your strains. And this is just giving you a perspective on your accident types, the bottom left accident type. And no surprise there. What's your number one leading cause? Musculoskeletal strains. Not a surprise there. And then indemnity, type of claim. Indemnity, 5, medical only, 7, and then notice only. Those are the ones that Kelly ultimately makes that decision if it's just concerning enough that she decides it wants to go to Argent, and that's fine. And those, no harm, no foul, just everybody's aware. But again, those indemnities, we'll always try to get those as low as possible. And I'm a realist. If you have somebody that has a fracture and they have to go to the hospital and they have to have surgery, they're going to have indemnity. You know, I'm a realist. There's no way you can live the rest of your career with never seeing another indemnity. I'd like that, but it's not going to happen. Really what you want to approach are the things that could be easily controlled. When you go, oh, right? All right. So we'll look over on the back side. So what jumps out at you there? We break ours out very detailed. So you'll see resident/patient combative, resident/patient transfer, resident/patient repositioning. When I start to look at these, I actually lump them back into themes. So what do you see as a theme? Combativeness and patient handling when you see them. Transferring, repositioning, patient falling, those all are patient handling of some respect. So at that point, I lump those back together. So when you start to add all of your patient/resident, you start to see that is one of your number one frequencies, that and then combativeness. And sometimes those two go together as well. You're transferring them and they slug you. So that will definitely be something that you're going to, the next thing that we're doing on our hit list that I'll be working with Jackie on is the patient handling, customer consumer handling piece to that. And again, we'll be doing a train the trainer and rolling that out, and this will reach every single one of your employees ultimately, because you can see now this is one of your biggies. And then if you want to look at the dollars, now I sorted this by dollars. So there again, frequency, combativeness is number 4 cases, and the dollar amounts is your highest loss driver. However, if you start to add up all the other patient/transfer, patient/assisting, that rivals the cost. So they're about neck and neck for cost. So those are by far your 2 most costly type of events. Now, the very bottom one, slip but did not fall. In fact, that didn't even cost you anything. And you don't see this really showing up on your frequencies. I will tell you though, even though you haven't seen it on this will still be one of the things that we'll be talking about at depth in the future for patient, or I'm sorry, not patient, slips, trips, falls, because that tends to be a biggie in every organization. So even though we haven't seen it yet, that's not the point. We know that is still a potential loss driver. But so that kind of gives you a perspective. These are actually your numbers, and that's where we're going to be heading in the future. All righty, we'll move on. Any questions about that sheet, by the way? Any of the numbers? Pretty straightforward. So here's just a few stats. We won't belabor this, but the gist of it is, for every dollar that you spend on safety, the time to improve safety, you get many dollars back. And those are just the hard costs. Those are just the hard costs. They're indirect costs. And typically indirect costs, those soft costs, the time that it takes you while you're babysitting the case, the amount of effort and time that you're having to backfill for somebody who is now there, not there. All of those other things, the time behind the scenes, that the administrative time that Kelly and Jackie have to put in doing all of their legwork, all of those costs actually are usually more than the hard costs. So it really is at the iceberg kind of theory. So safety definitely pays. All right, so what can you do to help control worker comp costs? And it's part of the accident investigation. So prevention. I hope to say the word prevention a lot throughout this. Even though this is accident investigation, which means it's already happened, I want to really tie your lessons learned and what you can do from that event that's already happened to make sure it never happens again. Because again, we're looking big picture. So prevention, number one, good accident investigation, again, prompt responses to those incidents, and then corrective actions whenever possible. That's how you prevent something from happening again. And then, of course, obviously controlling the claim, making sure that employee is coming back in a timely fashion, and you're providing them with light duty. All right. Another benefit to this, and again, I'll try not to sound too cynical, but when an episode happens, it's either true or it's false. It's one of those two. There isn't any in between. It either is real or it's not. And the vast majority of incidences truly are true. It's that small percentage that are completely bogus that wind up being your biggest nightmare if you've ever dealt with a presumed fraudulent case. They are the ones that keep you up at night. But the best way that you can get on top of that is to do a prompt, thorough accident investigation at the time. One of the biggest mistakes that I see, and when I used to be on your side of the fence and working with companies, is that I come in and I tell you, hey, I did this and that, and you get out your little form as the supervisor and you wrote, Cindy did this and that, and you just parrot back and rewrite what I just told you, without ever going to the scene of the crime and looking to see, does it make sense? Was it replicatable? Do you think it's true? Okay, so that's one of the biggest mistakes. So we're going to talk a slight deviation, which might be appropriate to you guys. But for the most part, you never want to only parrot back what the employee says. You can certainly state, Cindy told me this, Cindy states this, but you never want to just accept that as the gospel because you could be scammed. And again, I hate to say it, it's not usually the case, but those that are really nightmares. So that's how you're going to be able to help detect, and you've got a very small window of time. So, and I'm going to use some real examples. They're some of my favorites. Prompt response obviously helps you to maintain control. One thing that you're going to do, this is your honey-do list for you guys, is you're going to go back to all of your other supervisors, employees, and make sure they know what the expectation is for this policy. Everybody has to know that you need to report these things right away. That's how you help to maintain control and the expectations for light duty. Everybody needs to be on the same page. And the other thing that is really important, because people, I bet you if you ask them to fess up, everybody's had some sort of a near miss, and they never thought to tell you about those. Because, ooh, I fell down the stairs and whoo, good thing, and go about their business. So they don't realize that reporting that might prevent somebody else from being injured. So that's one of the things you want to convey as well. It may not be just for their safety, but for their coworkers. That tends to actually elicit more of a cooperation sometimes than they're concerned for themselves. And again, so prevention, corrective actions, and often it's identifying additional training, which goes back often to the newbies. Funny how that goes around. So I want to give you a couple of examples, real life examples. One is in one of my other current accounts. They're a healthcare organization, very similar to yours, but they do mostly ILS. So they're out visiting homes and doing home care. And a lot of times the houses are not in very good condition. And in this case, the front steps was wood and rotting. And the nurse came down the steps The step was loose, gave way, she fell. She just had, minor scuffs and mostly her pride was hurt, but not really seriously injured. That could easily have been one where she went, whoo, lucky me, and went on. But she called to notify the home office of this unsafe condition because she was concerned what's going to happen to the next nurse that comes down the next day. That nurse may not be so lucky. And in fact, that organization did have a slip and fall, ICE, and the person had a profound head injury, med flighted in, out for many, many months. So, that was a kind of a sore spot. So I think that prompted them in this case, but really you don't want to have to learn from a bad example. But she called, reported it in, they notified the other staff, you have to go in the side door for the immediate time, and they did talk to the family about correcting that condition because you can't have your employees going into an unsafe condition. So that is a true root cause, not just, oh, well, she should have been more careful or she was just clumsy and she fell, which you'll see on managers' reports, should have been more careful. Well, shouldn't we all? Okay, so that's one example. The other example is, this is a factory setting, but the point is well taken. I had a gal who, this was a whole department. So there were about 30 people in this department, and they made baby plastics products, baby bottles and nipples and those types of things. And they are judged on their rate, right? We all have a productivity, and their productivity is their rate of this machine and how well they're keeping it going. So this machine is constantly jamming. So she's not making her rate. So when it jammed one time, they all take turns on this machine. That was her day to be on this machine. She does the path of least resistance, which is she sticks her hand up through the chute, slinks her hand under the guard. By the way, past all these signs on the outside of the chute that say, don't stick your hand in here. Slinks it up to free out this object. And of course, when she does, what do you suppose happens? The machine cycles and it comes down and it whacks her hand a good one. Enough to the point where she had to come in to see the nurse. So she's been busted. That was me. And I said, well, why did you do that? Unfortunately, you know your people well enough, so I didn't sound too crabby. And I was like, oh, Tina, but why did you do that? So lesson one is when you're doing your investigation, you act like a 3-year-old. But why? But why? But why? Okay. So, but why did you do that? Well, because, it's jamming all the time, constantly jamming, and I'm not making rate. So, you know what? I get it. You do get it, right? She's trying to be a good employee. So, but why? The machine's constantly jamming. But why? Well, nobody's ever thought to report it to maintenance. So there's a corrective action right there. So next question is, but there's a panel on the side, right there on the side of the machine, which is laser locked. It's called an interlock. So if you open up the side panel, it shuts everything down so you can get into it that way, so you don't get your hand whacked. But why didn't you just go in the side panel then? She had a good answer for that too. It required a little hex key, a little like a wrench to get into it. And it wasn't there. It was in the maintenance shop 300,000 square feet away. How long would that have taken her to have gone down to get that dumb little hex key to open up the side panel when she's trying to make rate? So again, I don't like that answer, but I get it. So, but why? It wasn't there. So now you start to see, and what's the last piece of this? She was the one that got spanked that day. You guarantee me that they were all doing that same thing. That was how they were unjamming it. So the true root causes were the fact that nobody was trained to let the maintenance staff know. They should have been encouraged not to have to tolerate that, to make sure that on rare occasion, when they have to go into the side panel, they're able to do the right thing. And then the last corrective action was the entire department had to be counseled because it wasn't just her. So now we'll use this as my example. So you can see all of these concepts for, again, kind of the iceberg under the surface. So for every 300,000, and you can find other numbers, but the concept is still the same. For every 300,000 at-risk behaviors, right? We've all done naughty stuff that we just simply got away with. Always. Think about your teenage years. So you get away with most of it. That's part of the problem, is people usually get away with it. And it encourages them to keep going on. But out of that number, that frequency, about 3,000 will actually turn into what we call a near miss. So truly something almost happened, or something very minor. Like I would call Tina's basically a near miss. She really had a very minor injury in the end. Out of that, you get a number of injuries that are severe enough to be called a recordable, meaning that they have to go onto an OSHA log and there's an injury that needed some sort of significant medical treatment. And out of that, about 30 will result in an injury bad enough to where you have indemnity, meaning they've lost time. And out of that, 1 will result in a death. So taking that concept, she was the near miss, but you can bet that all the rest of that department, everybody in that facility needed to be educated, because they were all doing that at-risk behavior, which will ultimately lead to another injury. So that makes sense? So that's why we're really, when we're doing this investigation, we're going beyond just what happened. Should be more careful. So what should be investigated? Basically, anything that had a potential for injury. Even in her case, it was pretty minor. It should still be looked at, because her minor injury was something much deeper in the end, right? And all injuries, regardless, again, the severity, because of that idea, and the near misses. So, and I'll give you another example of a near miss. We had, again, factory setting, but you get the point. We had very clearly defined pathways for fork trucks. So when pedestrians are walking, the fork trucks are somewhere else. You don't want the two of them meeting, and never had an issue. One day we had an employee almost get run over, almost, near miss. They reported it. Instead of going, oh my gosh, you know, thank goodness for that, they reported it. We went out. What's the difference? What's changed? But why? But why? But why? Well, what had happened was this area that normally was a T crossing, and you could see pedestrians coming, just like you're driving, was no longer, there was a blind spot. But why? Well, because we'd had extra boxes. They'd stored all the boxes in this open area, right? Staging it, storing it, all this extra supply created that blind spot. So that was the real reason, the root cause. It wasn't, well, you know, they should have been more careful, or why didn't Bob blow his horn? It was more than just that. So we moved the obstruction to get rid of that blind spot, and we still put up a globe to add better visibility anyway. But that was the real root cause for that. So does that make sense? Now we'll go into a shady case, and I'll ask you to tell me what you think. So there's a nurse that came back to her supervisor and said, woe is me, I've just slipped and fallen and injured every body part known to man. And told her supervisor, in this big pool of water outside of dietary. Now, oftentimes you would see a supervisor just, oh, Sally fell and slipped in a big pool of water, hurt this, hurt this, hurt this, hurt this. Just basically parrot back. This supervisor immediately went to the area and looked. The floor is bone dry. Takes a picture. Calls the maintenance guy and said, did you happen to squeegee up water outside of this floor here in the last few minutes? No. And goes back up, and what would he now look at on the nurse? What would you think to look at? If she was wet. Yeah. She just skidded in this big giant pool of water. She's going to be wet. And she'd hit all these things, woe is me, hit this, hit that. You'd see something, right? If I landed on the floor right now, I'd at least have a little red mark, have a little abrasion, I should have something to show for my battle injuries, right?
Wet clothes.
Wet clothes. Yeah. So goes up immediately, takes a picture of her. We're going to get to that in a minute. She's bone dry, says, can you show me? Can you actually, I mean, I hit every body part. I should have something red. Can you show me something? No. Then the story all fell apart. But had he not looked at that point in time, even if you'd have gone back a few days later to go, well, gee, where's that leaking water coming from? Because I don't want anybody else to slip, right? If it was true, it would have been all dried up. he could have never have proved that that whole thing was shady. Couldn't have done it if you'd have waited. So again, time is of the essence. If it's real, of course, you'd want to fix the problem. And if it's false, you've got a real small window of time to document it as such. So there we go. So now we go on. Again, root cause, they are always going to be one of these two things, either an unsafe behavior or an unsafe condition. What do you suppose is the most common? Behaviors or conditions? Behaviors. About 80% are behaviors, about 20% are the rickety front steps that collapse. But most of the time it's a behavior. And you're going to want to ask why. But why? Rather than just say we shouldn't have done that, like Tina with her hand, she knew she shouldn't have done it, but there was a reason why she did it. So you really want to kind of go the 3-year-old route, but why? But why? But why? And that will help you understand. So, and again, you want to make sure that employees know that even minor injuries are worth investigating, even if they got away with it. Is it something that could be fixed or prevented for the next time? And the classic, I think I'm fine. You always want to make sure to remind them if there's any status changes or any intent to seek medical at any point, they have to let you know. It's not to prevent care. It's not to keep them from getting care. It's not to direct care per se. It's to be aware of it and be able to assist them. Because in Wisconsin, we can't direct care, but you can kind of help to educate and guide them so they're not running off to the emergency room for a paper cut. Because you know what the ER does? They throw the grenade over the wall because they don't want to mess with those sheets. And they just say, oh, I'll take the week off until you can get to your own doctor. And then what do you get out of the deal? Indemnity for no good reason. Okay. All right. So again, I've hit that a lot because this is truly one of my pains that I lived through when I was on your side of the fence. All right, so, and we'll look at this in detail. We'll just look at it at the end. But this is just a quick rundown, and you'll have all of this as your guides, so this will help you as well. But for the supervisors, the employee will notify the supervisor. You'll pull out the pack, the envelope, and then the employee will fill out that form. You'll want to make sure the supervisor will make sure that that form is filled out in its entirety. Sometimes you'll see people that will write a name and a birthday and I hurt my knee, and that's it. You need to make sure that all of the details are filled out and that body diagram is marked. Okay. If they wind up seeking outside medical, then you'll also want to assure that they're given the doctor's note and the pharmacy prescription form as well. And then the supervisor will notify, and you're the branch managers, right? I want to make sure you're the branch manager. So you'll get that notice from the supervisors. But the supervisors will immediately get that rolling. All right. And obviously, I want them to correct a situation if it's unsafe. And they'll keep in touch with you. Then from your perspective, and this is written on the front of your envelope, and we'll look at that in a moment. You'll want to identify any witnesses and speak with them. And you'll want to do that individually. And there is a form in that packet. And you might have to photocopy it if you have 2 witnesses. But most of the time, I don't think you're going to have just a wealth of people. You'll give each witness their own sheet, and they'll fill that out right away. The reason for that is because people's memories change. I mean, I can tell you today what I saw this morning. Ask me 2 weeks from now. If it's a shady case, oftentimes you'll have the employee saying, well, I know it was just really minor, but tell him I went down all 10 steps, you know, when I really just went down 1, because I'm looking to hopefully make it worse than it is. Or I go home that night, my husband goes, you know, your knee's been bothering you for a long time. Why don't you say it's related to this? So then I go back to my witness tomorrow and go, hey, Maureen, tell him I went all the way down the steps and I landed on my knees. So the witnesses don't need to be badgered. Sound like a lawyer, but the witnesses don't need to be feeling that they're getting pressure from somebody. So the sooner you can get that from them, they can say, I already talked to Sally, you know, done. So you want to make sure that the witnesses are dealt with right away and fill out that form. And then you'll also be conducting a detailed review of the scene. And you might, depending on the circumstances, also have to direct the supervisor at that time to kind of be your eyes and ears for the short term. And root cause, you've heard me say that a lot now. I can't stress that enough. You really do want to see if there's anything to be had. You will have the occasional bizarre thing. I've gotten people calling, hey, this happened. What could be done differently? And I'm like, I have no idea. You will have some that they're just really weird, freaky, nothing you could ever reasonably do to prevent it, but most do have something to be learned from it. And you'll want to make sure that you document on that investigation form. And again, we'll look at the papers in detail. So we'll apply this conversation to your paperwork. We'll look at that at the end. And the corrective actions, anything that is pertaining to that employee's care, anything like that goes onto your form as well. And again, I think we've hit this, so I'll just briefly mention it again. In Wisconsin, you cannot direct care. So you can't actually say, I want you to go down to Dr. Sally on First Street. You can't do that. But what does often help is when you're working with that person initially after the injury, sometimes it may be you making them go to the doctor when they don't want to, right? Again, appropriate care, you'll have your best outcome rather than waiting somebody hobble around for weeks before they're seen. That backfires on you too. But just simply educating and assisting them. You know, somebody wants to go to the ER for the paper cut. You can say, well, you know, that's probably not your best option. You'll wind up waiting for a long period of time. They won't be able to give you the return to work form. Most don't want to. So just simply offering to help them. What I used to do is just say, you know, I really do think you need to be seen. What clinic do you like to go to? Or if it's something a little bigger, do you folks in your areas have occupational medicine clinics? So some of you do, maybe some of you don't. So if you've got a good OcMed clinic in your area, you can actually say, we have an occupational medicine clinic in our area. Can I help you get into that? They specialize in employee injuries. Most people like that idea. Sure, you can help them. And that keeps you or them out of the clutches of the urgent cares and the ERs, which generally don't do the best for either you or them. And again, if they need emergency care, absolutely, by all means. But a lot of times a minor sprain or strain, they just say, take off until you see your own doctor, and now you're having to battle a lost time for no reason. For those of you that don't have that, you will go back to your employee and say, well, I really would like to get you seen, or can I help you? What clinic do you go to? What doctor do you like to see? I'd like to help see if I can't get you in. Sometimes when you call up as the boss, you know, I'm the manager for this facility and I have an employee that's been injured. I need to get them in right away. That actually holds more weight than the employee themselves calling. You can use the right scary words and get the attention that sometimes the employee themselves doesn't accomplish. Okay. All right. So again, you can't direct, but you can assist. And again, make sure that the clinic knows that you are an employer that will honor restrictions, and that basically short of bed rest, you will give them some gainful employment. And that's really important that you have that relationship. So pretty much short of bed rest, you will keep them working. That's very important. How do you accomplish that? I will leave that up to you to some extent. If you got a good employee that you know and trust, and you say, hey, you're going into your clinic today at 2 o'clock, make sure you tell the physician we will honor any type of restriction you'll need. And you trust them, and they will. On the other hand, if you've got some folks that I can think of, but I won't name names, I would have to call the clinic and say, we will honor restrictions. We will not violate your today, and we will take care of them. Because they are going to tell the doctor, because they want off, that we whip them and beat them and torture them and this is speaking from experience, so I try not to sound sour, but so you'll have to kind of base that on whether you trust your people or not. Okay. All right. And again, if they are going outside, you'll send out those 2 different forms, the doctor's note, the doctor's return to work form, and the prescription form called My Matrix. As far as investigation, here's some tips for you as far as what you're going to be doing. Talk to the employee at length. Obviously, if this is an emergency, out the door they go. But fortunately, most injuries are not emergencies. And it gives you an opportunity to work and talk with them and really figure out what's going on. Just a one-on-one conversation. You don't want to coach or lead them. You want to ask open-ended questions. And again, think like the 3-year-old, but why, but why, but why? You really want to get to the story behind the story. Part of that you'll be assessing validity. My boss always says something that I find hilarious. You'll get people that'll say they wiped out terribly outside in a big pile of snow. And my boss would say, when I go out there, I'd better see a snow angel. You'll go out there. You just told me you wiped out in that huge pile of snow out there. I should see a skid mark and this. You go and look. So you're always assessing for validity, or like the nurse in front of dietary that didn't exist. And again, most of the time it's real, but you still need to check. And you'll want to look for corrective options. And think about cleanup. Depending on what it was, there may be blood involved, there may be glass involved, you know, who knows? So you still have to go out to the area and make sure that there isn't something that's imminently harmful. And again, you're going to look for evidence. What they say and what you see should jive. They should make sense. Okay. And you might have to preserve the scene until you get some pictures. So I mentioned how the one guy took pictures. Do your supervisors and yourselves have the ability with a phone these days or a little portable to take a picture? Does everybody have that? Everybody should have that ability. If not, you can buy those little cheap disposable ones and have them at a location. But everybody should be able to have the ability to take pictures of the scene. Very important to do that before anything gets changed. Again, a reason why you need to do it sooner than later. Again, you're working with unsafe conditions. Those have to be corrected. Proper cleanup. Again, sharps and blood might be involved. And determine any of the affected employees. So remember what I talked about the one gal? It affected the whole department. And that would be true for you. You've got a whole house. And you've got other shifts and other people. So it may be something that you have to touch base with all. And beyond that, your organization, what works in one home may be a good lesson learned that should go out to all the homes. So we don't want you all working in a vacuum. So you find out that there's an issue with one lift, you may want to make everybody aware of that problem with that lift. Hey, check this tab, they break off. Okay. So again, lessons learned might not be just a help for your location, but for others. And again, you're talk to people in private, open-ended questions, you know, the reporter, who, how, where, why, those types of things. Oh, we already hit that. Again, you want to make sure that you convey that you're finding facts and not fault. That's a little hard to do. Hopefully you know your people well enough. Like I knew my gal when she had, like, oh, why'd you do that? You know, she was willing to talk to me, and I hope I didn't sound too crabby. You know, I really was interested in figuring out what was going on. Try to use, avoid words like disregard. Why did you disregard our safety policies? You know, how come you were taking that shortcut? Those type of, you know, careless. those usually don't set you up for a good conversation. So pick your words a little bit carefully. And again, true root cause. So again, pictures, very helpful, especially if what they say does not match what you see. Especially. It is acceptable to ask the employee, if you're in a remote location and you trust them, or the supervisor, you may, because you can't be everywhere, you've got distance between locations, it may be something where you might have to ask the employee to take a picture. And like the nurse that fell down the stairs, I would have asked her to take a picture of the stairs, so you got that for your records. So that might have to happen. When you are documenting everything, you're going to, you think of the old SOAP notes. Remember, anybody know what SOAP notes are? Yep. Subjective, objective assessment. You can say, Cindy told me this, Cindy told me that. So whatever I say, you can make it clear that this is my statement. But then you will put in all of your objective. So let's use that nurse. Sally said she fell down, hit all these body parts, slipped in a big pool of water. That's what Sally said. I went to the scene 5 minutes after the report, noted the floor was completely dry. Talked to maintenance supervisor at 12:05, said he'd never cleaned up the area. 12:08, returned to Sally, observed completely dry, was not able to indicate any injuries, redness, swelling. I mean, those are all facts, right? Just tick, 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 tick. Now, if you were reading that, you'd be like, Sally needs to get fired. But you don't have to say that. You don't have to stoop to that. You just simply state the facts, right?
And in the work comp world on the front end, we wouldn't say fired.
That's right, right. That's right. You're thinking it and you're waiting for that day. But you can't do that until after it's all cleared, because then you're on the hook for indemnity. But yes. So just stating the facts is all you have to do, because I mean, the facts are the facts. So you will put all of yours as objective. Any recorded, Sally says or Cindy says, then you'll make sure that those are subjective comments that are associated with that person. But anything that you see, you'll just document are the facts. And again, root cause. Have you noticed that? I've said it over and over again. I'm a freak about root cause, because that's really how you lead to prevention for the next time. PPEs. This will be something that you'll ask. Were they wearing gloves? Were they doing the right procedure? Was the equipment proper? Were they using safety devices, right? The needles will get, needle sticks will be another thing that we'll talk about in the future. So were they adequate? Were they being used? Was somebody ignorant to the fact that they even existed? Maybe the newbies didn't even know. So anything like that. Additional training will almost certainly be needed for any unsafe behavior. And it may come down to documenting for the purpose of violation and disciplinary action. And I have seen time and time again where employers have had a really bad employee that continues to be a bad employee, and they all know it, but they can't do anything about it because they never documented and moved them through the disciplinary action program. And then they blow up in their face as an enormous work comp claim, usually fraudulent, and now they can't get rid of them. So if you want to always make sure that you document any disciplinary issues, because otherwise you've got no recourse later on. So again, so what do you do if what they say does not jive with what you're seeing? So you don't want to tell them they're lying. You want to make sure that you've got all those facts and observations. You can certainly ask questions, but there's no point in being confrontational. Just again, you want to get all your facts. And when you're writing everything, and you never put into the things in writing that you don't mind being seen later on. So everything that you put into writing will be factual, professional. You can call up Kelly, call her, and Kelly will in turn call Argent, an our claims person, and have a conversation as well. She'll be typing things into the computer, but again, what you have in your comments will be also factual and neutral, but you can believe that she'll be on the phone. And that's how that kind of gets taken care of. So, okay. All right. And then again, if there's any equipment involved, you have to evaluate that. Does it need to be repaired? We see injuries related to the lifts that fail. And then the employee is trying to save the day when the lift fails, and then they both get hurt. So even though we're the worker comp side, we really focus on the equipment because, again, the employee and the resident are two sides to the same coin. So regarding safe patient handling, it's good for the resident, it's good for the employee. You don't separate those two out. So that's one thing that comes to mind when we talk about the equipment, and were they using it correctly, following the safety procedures. All right. Oh. Huh, that's really bizarre. It's just, that is why it literally skipped to the beginning.
Oh.
And I can't get out of it. It's not doing anything.
James is right next door.
Just scroll down to the slide.
Yeah.
Scroll on the side there. Maybe
Yeah,
just
yeah.
down
You're
here.
just, well, yeah.
Will that work?
Yeah, I can bring it back down again. It just, let's see. All right. We're almost at the end.
You heard your name, huh? It must be James.
All right, I'm just gonna go that route and we're not gonna fight with it. All right, so we've talked about that. Let's to the next slides. We're almost done.
That's good.
Yeah, we're good. I've got one more slide after
I wanted to
this, so
say from the current slide, you can
Just
project it to a
Yeah,
fuller
do
screen.
it from the
Let's
current
see.
slide, please, because I'm not
Current
sure
slide.
if Ashley can see.
ah, the
Is
plot
it Is
thickens.
it hidden?
Okay, okay. Well, go with it.
See, I knew I shouldn't have been talked into that.
Oh, you know what, James? I think you put on for the call to end at 11 o'clock.
No, I put it to noon.
Oh.
Should be to noon, I thought.
I don't know. Why didn't you finish it out the way you
Well,
were doing it?
How do I get back? Now it's all gone.
James.
Ah, all right, I'm not messing with it. This is the last actual functional slide, so.
I'm gonna go call Ashlyn and let them know you're gonna, can you get back on regular when she's done?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So just to kind of close the loop conceptually, OSHA looks at things in a certain way. So the first question they'll say is, do you have a hazard or something dangerous? And if you say yes, then the next question you would say is, can we get rid of it? Can you actually get rid of it? Well, you know, we need needles. No, we can't get rid of needles. So now we can't get rid of it. Is there anything you can do to make it less nasty? So I'll use a chemical as an example. Formaldehyde, pretty nasty stuff. They've got some gentler, nicer chemicals, not as nasty as formaldehyde, that they can use to preserve tissue. So, you know, the hospital switch over to something that's not formaldehyde so they can make it less nasty. So that's one thing. Can you get rid of it or change it? If you can't, then you go to the next one, is engineering. So can you structurally, physically do something that creates a barrier between you and the hazard? So needles, sharps devices, sharps containers, again, kind of quarantines those things away. So you would want to use something as an engineering control. If that's not possible, then you might have a policy and procedure that would direct how you behave or what you do to, again, kind of shield you from that risk. And then if that doesn't work, then your last resort is PPE. And so if you're doing, I don't know if you have trachs in any of your, trach care or anything, you'd want to put face shield, wound care, you're going to use the right gown that's fluid resistant, gloves. So PPEs are your last resort in some cases, but that's all you can do. So they look at it in that way, is how do you mitigate those risks? And again, I really can't stress enough, you're going to want to share these events and corrective actions amongst the group, because it's neither good nor bad. But when you've got a large organization like yours, where you have all these little satellites, one of the risks when you have a large organization is that you start to get into these vacuums, little silos, as they always call them. And so one group doesn't share their benefits of knowledge with another. And we're really trying to work hard to make sure that doesn't happen. So again, if it's good for you, it's good for all. And then it may ultimately wind up resulting in flagging, hey, Kelly, we need a policy and procedure for this. It'll be something you never even thought about or never realized. Or maybe it's you need to beef up a current policy and procedure. So, everything that we're doing is really looking forward. You're kind of, all right. Oh, come on. We're trying to do this. It's a thinker. Yeah, for what about the D? Didn't plan ahead quite so well. So that's where we're going. Any questions? So now can we, you've got, they all have their paperwork or to look at?
Hang on just a second. Can we take just about a 5-minute break?
Sure, absolutely.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, and Ashlyn was able to stay on. They were seeing all of this, so that's good. But we're going to get out of this type of hangout and have James get them back on the regular so they can watch us and be part of that interactive part. Okay.
Great.
So 5 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. That was excellent.
So where are they watching us from?
I mean, is it like if we move around or do they see the whole room or do they see the screen?
Depends on where we have that camera right there. Yeah, if we
Okay.
can go ahead and get them on there regular, that would be great. They can, you'll see when we're down in the corner, I'll show you how they do it. It's really cool.
Did you go get friction reducing device? Did you have them in your car?
Yeah.
In your trunk?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
If you would
Yeah.
have those,
Yeah.
meaning just in case we like just wanted to, maybe they have them, maybe they don't, but.
Are we gonna talk about that for the group, you mean?
Well, first we're gonna do it.
First, we'll wrap up this, but then afterwards, we have a 5-minute break after the next.
Probably.
Or if you want to get an hour, if you want to. wait till
Yeah, I
after.
can get it now. I just didn't think we were gonna do that as a group presentation. That's all that was surprising me.
Are you
I
just
thought-
showing your?
Well, meaning just to show what it looks like.
Sure.
Not that we have to use. it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think
Blocking the flow.
Good thing I put deodorant on today.
Questionnaire stuff.
Compared to this size,
It's too complicated.
BJ said, he stopped by when you guys were doing this. He said during this, we should be able to see them and talk to them. They should be showing here.
They couldn't talk at all to us, so that's okay, but they got to see the whole presentation. I called them.
So that's one good.